Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Alhamdulillah. This is now episode 63 of the podcast The Forward, with myself, Brother Mahdi Locke, author of The Big Step, and I'm joined again today by Al-Hajj Abu Ja'far al-Hanbali.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum.
And today's topic is, what is a masjid? Because I think it could be something that a lot of people in the Anglosphere take for granted. They just assume they know what it is. It's just this building that we go to. We pray Jumu'ah there. We pray some daily prayers there. But we want to break it down as to what it is in the revealed law, what its function is, why it's been built, why it's important, and so forth. So the first thing to get into is, in what is a masjid, we have the linguistic definition, because obviously in English is referred to as a mosque, when the original word is a masjid, which in the Arabic language means a place of sujud. It means a place of prostration, because the verb is sajada. So a makan of sujud is the masjid. It's where you put your head down in prostration.
Alhamdulillah. So when discussing then the definition in the revealed law, then we want to then understand that the definition explained by Muwaffiquddin Qudama, Abdul Ghani al-Lubani, and others, is that the masjid is a specific place for the gathering together of people to discharge congregational prayers, as well as for the ta'leem of the people. That's the specific definition they gave.
Okay. Now, is there, on top of that, is there a distinction made between, say, what's called a Jamia masjid, and then a masjid that mainly has just the 5 daily prayers, but not the Jumu'ah?
So when you look into this, you'll find scholars like Ruhaybani and others, rahimahumullah, making a distinction between the different types of masjid. So you'll have the Masjid Bayti, which is the smallest form, which is where the place that's designated at one's house, that this is the place where the family prays in, where people worship in, that is the Masjid Bayti. Then in addition to that, after that, you're then looking at the masjid of your local neighborhood, right? So that masjid will be of your hayy or your locale, and that masjid will be the one that people go to for the 5 daily salawat when they pray in congregation. So they'll go to those in their local neighborhood, their local area, right? Then you'll have the masjid after that. You're talking about your masjid that is for the Salatul Jum'ah. So all the people in the city or what have you will gather at this one. So you have your Bayti, your Ratibi, or your hayy, and then you have finally then your masjid that is your Jamia. And this is where the people will pray for Salatul Jum'ah, Eids, if there's not an area where they're praying outside. So they will gather together at this one masjid, all the people of a city, and they will worship there.
Okay, so if we start off with this, so the first masjid is Masjid Quba and the Masjid Nabawi. So could you give us some details as to why these masajid were built and the circumstances behind them, starting with Quba?
Okay, so when looking at the circumstances, when the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is mentioned in Ibn Hisham's Siratul Nabawiyah under volume 2, and what it is when the amount of Muslims for the second Bay'ah of al-Aqaba, the second Aqaba meeting, grew, he wanted the Muslims that were in Yathrib, as the name as it was at the time, wanted to have sent to them scholars that would teach them. And so the people that were sent, 2 of them were Mus'ab ibn Umayr and Abu Umama, who was As'ad ibn Zarara. These 2 were sent, started teaching the people, gathering information. Now during this time, a foundation stone or a local place where they were going to pray, which was outside but had a sort of tinted, covered over area, that place, when Salatul Jumu'ah was revealed, the Prophet ﷺ didn't pray the first Jumu'ah. He wasn't present there. It was Abu Umam al-Bahili. He was the first one to have made the Jumu'ah. And so by the time the Messenger of Allah ﷺ makes the Hijrah and gets there, when the people saw that he was now doing the Jumu'ah, they weren't angry or upset, but they just thought, oh, Abu Umam not giving, because they got so used to him giving the Jumu'ah for all that time. And when he died, there was a lot of mourning among the companions and the people of Medina because they got so used to him. The same thing as when people found that Mus'ab ibn Umayr had died in Uhud. These were 2 of the senior great companions. So this issue of them starting off originally before they were sent they were senior teachers at the house of in Dar al-Arqam, which is the house of al-Arqam ibn Abi al-Arqam, who was one of the senior companions. This was on the outskirts of Mecca, far away from the hand of the Quraysh that could reach them. And for that time, adults were being taught. Adults were receiving information. Adults were gathering data. When people wanted to convert to Islam, they came to the Dar al-Arqam. That's the location that they came to. And once enough people had converted, where they had adults, then they started having classes and gatherings for men and women. And then they would then pass on these teachings to their children. Now, what ultimately winds up happening is the Masjid in Quba gets built. On the way, the Prophet ﷺ is finishing up his hijrah, coming on to al-Madinah, and on the way to al-Madinah, the site at Quba is then built, right? The site, that masjid that's there. Masjid al-Nabawi is built sometime later, but they both had their beginnings with Mus'ab ibn Umayr as well as Abu Umama or As'ad ibn Zurara.
So Jazakallah for that point. So how does it come up? How is a masjid built in that case, and who is in charge of it?
Okay, so in order to bring about a masjid, you have three conditions that need to occur. The first thing that occurs is you establish a jama'ah. So the jama'ah gets established.
The community.
Yes, so when the jama'ah gets established, the jama'ah then declares an emir. When the emir has been declared, after they've declared that emir, the emir then splits the jama'ah. The jama'ah gets split into the Majlis al-Shura. So you have your Shura panel and then the community at large. So that's the second step. So your Shura will be composed of the people that will make up sort of the machinery of your jama'ah. So you have the rank and file jama'ah people who are the worshippers, the learners, and things like that. But your machinery, where you'll have, maybe a treasurer or your faqih or your mufti, those people make up your Majlis al-Shura. So you have your regular meetings with your Majlis al-Shura, and then you have your big meetings with the community at large. And this is why the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he made the statement that you will see much ikhtilaf after me, and then he said, alaykum bi-sunnati wa sunnati al-khulafa ar-rashidin. Although it mentions that he was on the minbar, that wasn't Friday, it was Thursday. Because he would have a Thursday meeting that involved the whole community, where everyone would be there. So every Thursday evening, they would air out what differences that were there and get that resolved. They talk about what's going on, what's new, what's happening. And then the third and final step is they began the process of the building of the masjid. That's the third and final step. So the first step is the jama'ah gets established, an emir is chosen. The second step is the emir then splits the jama'ah and delegates duties. And then the third step is then the masjid goes into the process of being built.
Okay. All right, so we're going to bear these points in mind as we talk later on about the Anglosphere. Right. So now coming on to that, then you mentioned ta'aleem, so I want to get now into the function of the masjid. So obviously we have the 5 daily prayers, we have a Jumu'ah, the Jami Masjid. Yeah. So how does education fit in? How's this administered?
Right. If we look in this Sirah al-Nabawiyyah by Imam Hisham again, we find that the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're not only establishing the salah in jama'ah there, but they're also converts are coming there, like Thumama ibn Uthal came into the masjid and declared his Islam. You had other companions that arrived if there were announcements that needed to be made, other things. People were taught Quran there, right? So now what's happened is you've gone from, it's no longer Dar al-Arqam, because it's not just adults that are learning now. Now it's children. So now you have a community established. So the masjid is now established for adults and children at large, possible converts in waiting, people who were wondering about Islam but don't know. These people get established. When some of the prisoners at the Battle of Badr were freed, some of them came there. And so now they're established there. And so people are learning, they're getting the knowledge. Zakat al-Fitr is the distribution of Zakat al-Fitr is explained and broken down there. The only thing that does not happen in the masjid is judicial punishments are not meted out.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be outside of the masjid, because you don't want people associating the masjid with punishment. But inside the masjid with discipline, because that will give them a wrong understanding, which is weird because the masjid is associated with violence.
Yes.
Because of what happens in some of the classes, but that's a discussion later on probably.
That's an Anglosphere issue, yes. But also, and it has to be distinct from the souk as well. That's an important
Yes.
point. But the
They,
trading
they need to be far enough away in which one of them doesn't interfere with the other. So it needs to be the case that the adhan that is being made from the masjid is close enough to where it can be heard, but not too far to where the actual bustle of the souk will interrupt it, where the people become heedless, because it's falling in line with that hadith, "Abghadu biladi ilallahi aswaquha wa habu biladi ilallahi masajiduha." Right, it's falling in line with that hadith in the Suyuti's collection.
Okay, so building on from this, I mean that word building, about a community. So when we talk about the Masjid and education, and this is something I was thinking about, I was actually discussing this with some brothers a few days ago, that even when we look at some of the great educational institutes in the Muslim world, like the Qaraween and al-Azhar, Jami Damashq, these are Jami masjids.
Yes.
They're also functioning as universities or institutes of learning.
Yes.
And they're located downtown. They're right there in the city center. Like I know because I lived in Fez, the Qaraween it's a masjid, it's a university, it's a waqf in and of itself. It's also supported by waqfs around it. There are loads of shops surrounding the masjid. There are olive groves outside of it. And the way it works in Fez is that you have your Masajid al-Hayy all over. People go there five times a day for the daily prayers. On Friday, those masjids are closed. Everyone goes down to Jumu'ah, everyone meets there. But the beauty of this, and some people overlook this, is the fact that you have, say, you think, I'm talking about the Qaraween, but obviously this applies equally to Al-Azhar and these other places, that you have the fuqaha and the students of knowledge rubbing shoulders with the laity,
yes.
rubbing shoulders with the common people. So if common people have questions, the ulama, and they can't find an alim or a faqih, they can find a student of knowledge
Yes.
to ask a question to. So they have easy access to knowledge. If they want to sit in class, they can, and they have some time off, they can just sit at the back, listen in. And this also keeps the students of knowledge and the ulama on their toes, because they know what's happening in the community, they know what kind of issues people are dealing with, they know what...
Their knowledge is being reviewed and tested because people are coming to them and inquiring.
So, so this is what I wanted to ask you about. If you could comment on this. So where does the notion of the madaras come about, the schools?
Okay. Now, when we look at this, the separation between the jamia as well as the madrasah, which is sometimes pronounced madrasa, but it's madrasa, this separation. Really, the first place where we see this happening on a grand scale is Dar es-Salam, also known as Qubbatul Islam, or the Dome of Islam, Baghdad. Initially, what was happening in Baghdad is you had your jamia, and then you also had, in local neighborhoods, people had their local madrasa. So you had the Hanbalis had their local madrasa, the Shafi'is, and so on and so forth. But one of the khulafa of the Abbasids got the idea of, what if we just took the jamia and put a madrasa on the side of it? The Mustansiriyah. He thought that would be a great idea. So he decided to put the Mustansiriyah to build this masjid alongside of a jamia. Right. Now what this did is it created...
the madrasa next to a jamia.
Yeah, put it right next to it. So what it did is it created sort of this two-pronged learning environment to where now... And there were good and bad outcomes to it. Because what it did is there were good outcomes, so people knew, okay, this is the madrasa. The fuqaha are always located here between these hours and those hours. But then it also kind of separated between some of the laity and the fuqaha, because now there was like a separate place.
Yeah.
And sometimes the laity couldn't get in there because there were sometimes entrance requirements to getting into some of these. Like you had to memorize so much of this, you had to know so much of that, you had to memorize the Quran before you could do this, before you could do that, right? So then there had to be a further breakdown of the madaris into like a mahad versus a madrasa. So okay, the madrasa is the ibtida'i phase where anyone can enter in, and then the mahad is now when you want to go to a mahad. Okay, now you need to know these entrance requirements and these other things, because they realized we're creating a barrier. But the original point of the madrasa was to have access to everyone that was among the fuqaha in your locale next to the jamia. So they're not walking these far distances, it's right next door. Okay. So literally the ulama are walking, and al-Mustansir Billah was the first one to have housed all four madhabs under one building. So he thought this would be a great idea if we just put them in there. That way they're all together, and it created a really boisterous and lively environment. And that also required the madrasa system, because as we know, you're not supposed to be raising your voice in the masjid except in the case of knowledge. But if you start getting, 20 fuqaha, and each of these fuqaha has 10 students, you're no longer raising your voice with ilm because people are talking over other people, there's debating going on. So okay, we don't want the masjids to become places where people can't concentrate on their afkar, memorizing Quran, and doing muraja of other sciences. So what we'll do is we'll create this madaris system.
Okay. Otherwise, the Jami Masjid has to be very, very big.
Yeah.
I noticed that in the Qaraween, it is a massive,
huge
space,
complex.
Massive complex, and it is possible to find somewhere to pray and do your dhikr, because the classes are well spread out, because they have the space. So following on from that, you're also reminding me of, again, because I remember reading in Mustafa Sibai's book, من وراء حضارتنا, from the Wonders of Our Civilization. He mentions all these awqaf and all these schools. You had even in Damascus itself, you'd have 70 schools as awqaf set up for this for one particular madhab, for example.
Wow.
The Hanafis have this many, the Hanbali's have this many, the Shafi'is have this many. But the Muslim was all four.
Yeah, all four in one place.
In one place.
Because he thought this would be a great idea. And so the slab, there's the foundation slab that he set. And then there's the opening slab, which you're walking under when you enter into the Mustansiriyah, where it has the Basmala and Salat and Salam Rasulullah. And then it says, instead of saying as it would over a normal madrasa, ala madhab al-imam, it's got ala madhab al-a'imma. And then it's got all the names. So you're walking in there, oh, subhanAllah, they're all here.
Okay.
So then if someone wants to know what the mu'tamid of a school is, they don't have to go all the way across town and, maybe, riding a wagon or whatever else. Instead, they're all here. So someone can go and ask a Maliki that's based in Baghdad, what's the ruling on this? Fuqaha from other schools now don't have to go these long journeys. They're all housed under one unit.
Wow.
In fact, there's a book that was brought out by Sheikh Sirawayel, big sheikh from Duma, about the history of the Mustansiriyah, and he breaks it down by madhab, like the scholars of the different madhabs that came from there, like that are famous throughout history. And there's a whole listing of them, like, okay, here's all the muftis from the different madhabs that came from there. Hanafi muftis from Mustansiriyah, Shafi muftis from Mustansiriyah. He'll give you the number, break them down to the madhabs, who they are, their whole name, everything else. Fuqaha, poets, scholars, scientists. It's broken down. It's about 800 pages.
Oh, wow. Yeah. This is a recent book?
No, this is like old. It's like from the 60s, I think.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Now, on this point, could I ask, okay, well, I don't know what to call it. Like, where does this, I call it the Darul Uloom model. Maybe I'm not fair in calling that, but where does this idea come from of having a madrasa out in the wilderness somewhere, like on a mountaintop or in the jungle? Where did this idea come from? This is something we do see in the Anglosphere.
Yeah. So the idea of having buildings set aside in which they're far away. They're no longer based in the center of the city. Instead, they're far away locations. It would appear to be, because this is a, for lack of a better word, this is like an Ajami model. It's a non-Arab model. What most likely they're attempting to imitate, although they're calling it a madrasa or Darul Uloom, what most likely they're attempting to imitate is the zawiya or the dayr or the dir, always sometimes referred to. Now, the zawiya, dir, or dayr, what those places are for is they might be further away from the madrasa, and these are people that want to take up additional studies. So they might go home with the fuqaha or go home with the sheikh and go to his house that's far away and then come into the city every day. So these people are going far away to study and to review over this knowledge. They've come in. Sometimes they're people who have turned their back on a life of crime or a life of immorality, and they don't have anywhere to stay. So they stay in the zawiya or the dir or the dayr. They stay there and they start off. Well, other people saw that model and thought, well, we should do the same thing, and that will make us more pure because we're further away from the people and we have time to be away from them. We can just study and focus all the time on whatever we're focusing on. And then when we've done 6 years or 8 years, we'll come back and then we'll be, these magnificent people, and we'll be able to guide the people around us. The problem with that, though, is they're not coming down into the city every day as these people were. They're not mixing with people like these people were. So what happens is you have people that become divorced from reality for between 6 to 8 years. Yeah. And then they come back to their people and they're irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you go to university for 6 years and you come back out into the job market, you're actually worse off.
Yeah.
Because you've been, even if you've been studying like computing and everything else, because the sciences moved on, these other things have moved on while you've been going to school. So when you get out, everything you've learned over those 6 years is obsolete. You know, certain sciences, it doesn't matter, like archaeology, it doesn't matter, geology, rocks aren't going anywhere, certain things like that, it doesn't matter. But in certain areas like, you know, computing, other areas, you know, social sciences, things have moved forward, they've leaped ahead. And meanwhile, you're 6 years behind. So when they come back, there may have been certain social upheavals that happen in society that they don't know how to assess because they haven't been living around the people on a regular basis. Their life has been books, 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 without any practical application of that information. And so it's led to problems where almost like a monk style of doing things, or a monastic style where people have been cut off. But that being said, even the monks, like if you look at the Coptic monks of Egypt, even they mix with people.
Yeah.
Because it's deemed, you know, righteousness and part of their religion. But the people that have get involved in, for lack of a better word, Islamic monkery, they go away and then they come back and they've learned all this heavenly knowledge, but they're no earthly good to anyone.
Yeah.
And it creates these fitan because now there's friction between them and their family. There's friction between them and their wives. There's friction between them and people that they knew. There's friction between them and old friends of theirs because there's been this gap in time. The world's moved on.
And even in some cases, they come back and they fall into temptation, for want of a better expression, because they've been isolated from it for so long.
They've been deprived for that long.
And deprived, and then they get distracted by so many things because they're not used to dealing with it.
Yeah, they don't understand what's happening.
So now that we've established all of that, all of the above, of the function of a masjid, why a masjid is built, how it is built, who builds it, here in the Anglosphere, how exactly do masjids come about, and what actually is going on? That's what I want to establish. What is going on with masjids in this country, or in the Anglosphere at large?
Okay, so before we do that, I think the good thing is to talk about how masjid planting began in the first 3 generations, because once you leave from Arabiya, how did masjid planting begin? How did people start planting masjids? What happened? So if you look at, say, the Jami Bani Umayyah, right, this masjid, this jamia gets built, right, on the say-so of companions and other people because they're told, we need to build this location, we need this place. And they're the senior most of the companions that do this, right? Just as the Jawamiya and other places, the scholars say this place needs it. You know, this jamia, this location doesn't have a jamia. This location doesn't have a masjid. We need to build one. So then what happens is they gather funding together. It might be from the Bayt al-Mal, but usually it's from private donors that give it from the Waqf.
Exactly.
And so now, while the masjid's being built, there's already a Majlis al-Shura. There's already a Jama'ah. There's already an Emir. And in circumstances like that, now that the masjid is being completed, or the masjid is near completion, if the Emir doesn't become the Imam will then be appointed. And what will happen is the fuqaha that are above them will appoint like a mufti. Okay, now we've appointed someone in this area because it's these people that receive the complaints. Oh, we don't have a masjid. We don't have this. We don't have that. So the fuqaha will say, well, okay, well, we know what you need then. You need a masjid. So they give the command that now the masjid needs to be structured. The funding starts getting put into right. The ball starts rolling. The machinery begins. And then when it's built, the fuqaha will appoint one of their, say, senior students. He's not yet a faqih, he's a mufti. So we'll appoint him to lead the salah, to answer your masail, to deal with your issues that are day-to-day matters that are already settled. We'll go ahead and appoint him. Now, where are we appointing you? Well, I'm from Said Masr in this particular city, right? It might be from like where Abdul Hakim, Abdul Latif is from. So, okay, they're Hanabila. Okay, we're going to appoint a mufti that's Hanbali to just make it easy on people. He's appointed. Okay, well, no, I'm from Zaqaziq. Okay, well, you're Shafi'i. You're going, right? Okay, great. Boom, he's there. And this is how the matter carries on. So the people don't approach the imam regarding the plumbing.
Yeah.
They don't approach him that, oh, one of the fountains isn't working. They don't approach the imam about these things. They approach the people that have been appointed by the emir. Okay, well, these are the guys that work in the janitorial. This is the groundskeeper. This is the doorman. Hey, we can't get in this room and we need to teach a class. So they approach the doorman, right? So these different fields are separated and broken down into these different categories so that it can function. So the masjid is running properly. Yeah. Now then we come to this. We come to the next thing. Now, how do masjids function when we're talking about the Anglosphere? So there's two strands of doing things. The American strand, and both of the strands, what both the American and the European strand have in common is neither of them got permission from anyone. Yeah. There was nothing in place. There was no permission. No Majlis al-Shura was established. None of those things that I listed were done at all. So in the United States, what will happen is there'll be an ideologue or a sectarian group. They will then write back home and ask for the fundage to have a masjid built. That sectarian organization will then put forward the money to have this monster structure built. Yeah. And that structure will then be built. While that structure is being built, the sectarian party will then form a committee, approach the charity commission of whatever government of the country that they're in, to seek government protection, right? Which in the U.S. is 501c3 status, on the condition that they don't discuss anything political. Yeah. And they don't say anything that would undermine the government system or society of the country in which they are residing. Yeah. So they start out hamstringing themselves, tying themselves together. So then this big structure gets built, right? And they appoint an imam. And the imam in reality is only the imam of the salah. Yeah. He's not the imam of the masjid. Yeah. He can't affect change. If he says something and the committee says, no, we don't want to do that, yeah, it doesn't get done. They can depose the imam of the masjid. Yep. They physically depose the imam if they want to. They can have him on his tenure. We're going to have you on for about 4 months. See how it works out for us. If we like you, we keep you.
Basically, a probationary period.
Yeah, if we like you, we keep you. If you're not, wait a minute, hold on. You don't try an imam. That's like saying, well, you know, Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam, realize you've come the second time. We'll give you a try. See how it works. No, you don't try a king. You don't try a monarch. So this imam that's come in, he's the imam of the masjid. But no, he's the imam of the salah. He leads the 5 prayers. He does that. Whatever monies or wage that he receives is controlled by the committee. Yeah. So they control him. So in reality, he is the man that leads the salah. That's all he is. Right. The European model is, again, the same thing. Business owners want to form a masjid. So business owners who have the cash, together with committee members, which may be people from the local village or where they're from back home, come together to build a masjid, what they call a masjid. They will usually convert a house or build something else. Now, keep in mind, during this time, there's no sifting through the wealth of deciding what type of wealth is being used and whether this wealth is licit or illicit. None of that's happening. It's just a whole lot of money's pouring into it, with the understanding that what we're going to do by the end of the day will make up for whatever wrong we've invested in it, starting from the get-go.
The ends justify the means.
Yeah. So this is what will happen. So we'll carry on in this vein, and then when they finish, they'll appoint an imam, and they'll usually pick someone from where they're from. Yeah. And someone who shares their same political philosophy or ideological grounds. And they then decide that, okay, this is the person that's going to be there. And that person is beholden to the committee. Just like in the U.S. phase. But in this case, they've also chosen the person that ethnically is most like them. Yeah. To make sure that there's never any separation. So there might be people on the committee that belong to another ethnicity, but they'll never have a real say. Because the controlling members of the committee and the imam that they've appointed is the dominant ethnicity of the group. So you'll never have any heterogeneity. It will always be homogeneic, no matter what you do. So you might want to have marriages that happen between darker skinned races and lighter skinned races. They won't. You might want Zakat al-Fitr to be distributed in the way it's supposed to be. It won't happen. Because these people control it. Yeah. And the imam, if he knows what's good for him, he'll be quiet. And he'll keep his nose out of what whatever the business that that committee is doing. And then so you have these people. You have the congregation scared of the imam because he's telling them they'll go to hell if they don't give sadaqah. The imam is scared of the committee because the committee tell him he'll get out if he doesn't say what they want to say. And the committee is scared of the charity commission.
Yeah.
Because the charity commission's told them, we'll shut this whole thing down if you don't do what we say and follow through what we ask. And then the charity commission is afraid of the government.
Yeah.
And the government's afraid of the bankers. So that's the little system that it runs in, and that's the whole hamster wheel that this whole thing operates on.
So these masajid that are set up, here in the Anglosphere, I think both models. I think in the first one you mentioned about sectarian differences. I mean, we had the same thing here in the UK. And that's why you have, for example,
a plurality of Jumu'ahs.
Plurality of Jumu'ahs. So you could have, usually it's three.
Yeah.
3 different Jumu'ahs in this country. So, I mean, I will say it. I mean, I think there's when you have people who are caught up in that Pakistan construct and the Barelvi Bandi Ahmadis construct, you can have those people living on the same street or in the same neighborhood, but they're going to have their own Jumu'ahs. Yeah. When there's no need.
I mean, in this city that we're speaking from, there are 27 masjids.
Yeah.
27. I'm giving a conservative amount. Now, just on this road that we're speaking from in the house we're recording this at, there are, 3 masjids? If we're walking to a 10-minute walk, there's the one down the road, the one down from there, and then the one down. There's 3 masjids.
Yeah, and they're all doing Jumu'ah.
Yeah, they're all doing Jumu'ah, and they're not at max capacity, where there needs to be another masjid. And so, according to Abdul Qadir Badran and other fuqaha that you've mentioned, the Jumu'ahs would be invalid. The only Jumu'ah that would be valid would be the first one. That starts at that time.
And the first one is the Jumu'ah that makes the first takbir.
Yeah.
For the that's the first Jumu'ah.
Yeah, that's the first one. All the other ones are batil. And now there's no consideration of that point, the fiqhi point. There's no consideration of it. Because what had happened is many of these masajid have formed because they started off with one person. But then someone else in the committee thought, well, I'm better than him. I mean, I can start my own one.
Yeah.
But they fell out because of ideological differences. So they started out, everyone was of one mind. And then someone mentioned something and said, well, no, we need to do this. No, we don't. We should do this now. Or they wanted to bring in additional traditions, or they wanted to subtract certain traditions. They fell out. They build another masjid. Right? So they start, they siphon followers from the original masjid to there. And then something happens, that masjid falls out. Right? And the whole process continues on. And none of the reason for the building of these has been, we have a massive crowding problem, because I've been to these places and it's not to the point where we're praying in the street. We've had to expand it, knock down a wall or something like that. That's not been the case. We're prostrating on the feet of someone else or on their back. That's why they decided to expand Masjid an-Nabawi in the time of Uthman, because people came to him and said, listen, people are actually prostrating on the backsides of other people.
Yeah.
People are prostrating on the feet of other people. We really, really do need to make this masjid wasi'ah. We really do. So then Uthman, only then did he relent. Okay, we'll do it then.
Yeah, so we're not supposed to do this without need, but subhanAllah, so what we're having here is, out in the Anglosphere, is where a masjid is just it's like a political tool.
It's a political tool. For lack of a better word of talking about it, if you look at, say, the history of, say, the Odd Fellows, the Elks, the conservative clubs, these sort of gentlemen's clubs, that's pretty much how it works. It's a gentleman's club.
Yeah.
If you come in and you try to shake anything up, or you try to change stuff or do stuff you're not supposed to do, then you will be removed from the gentleman's club.
Yeah.
You will just get put out. Even sometimes members of the gentleman club toss out other members.
Yeah.
Because they don't toe the line on certain things. So if you are part of the Odd Fellows, the Good Fellows, the Elks, the Shriners, and you get out of line, they will take your fez off you, your Ilan Bay fez, and toss you out. Right? And it's the same thing how it works in this standpoint is you will get tossed out. You will get told, okay, listen, you need to leave.
Yeah, and you stress the word gentleman because in a lot of these masajid, women have no role.
Well, that goes with an all-encompassing understanding that it's haram for men and women to attend the masjid.
Yeah.
And they extend this to say that this is ijma. Everyone agrees that it's haram for men and women to ever attend the masjid. The best place for them is at home, and they don't need to be here, and children shouldn't be here because they might soil the masjid with the najasa. So what happens is you have an entire, you have generations, not a generation, generations of people who don't learn about how male-female conduct should be, how to conduct themselves.
Yeah.
Children don't learn how to conduct themselves in a masjid. So when you look at them coming to a masjid in their 20s, they come in, hair sticking up, gelled up, t-shirt, pants dangling around their waist, carpenter's crack clearly apparent, just looking slovenly.
Yeah.
And you and I both know they don't look like that when they go to college.
Exactly.
They don't look like that when they go to a concert. They don't look like that when they go to a job interview.
Yeah.
But they come in the most slovenly, misshapen way possible when they go to the masjid. And they look completely ridiculous because of that reason. They don't learn conduct.
Yeah, because I translated that a long time ago from Sahih Muslim bi Sharh al-Nawawi. There's a hadith about women in the masjid, the permissibility of women being in the masjid, where children are supposed to pray, men in the front, children in the middle, women in the back.
Yeah.
But you're not going to see that in the Anglosphere. Very, very rarely you can see women in the back of the masjid praying.
Yeah.
That would just about never happen.
Yeah.
Someone might throw a heart attack if they see it, but that's how it's supposed to be. And people now, and now we have this whole issue now, sister sections. Yeah. Sister sections, and then...
Or sometimes the ladies have started building their own. It's okay, that's it. This is a ladies' masjid. No men allowed. So it's become like a Pac West health club now. Okay, you got yours? Okay, we got ours. Yeah. You want to have your racquetball club? That's fine. This is ours. Ladies' Pac West Masjid Club, and that's it.
Yeah. And you know these issues, because I think a common thing that comes up, for example, is you could have say the sisters section, and let's say there's a lecture or a talk going on, and the speaker is obviously he's a male, he's in the male section, he's speaking, and the sisters are in their section on a microphone only.
Yeah.
But then you have these issues where, because the sisters are not actually there and they're not in the presence of the men, they have quote unquote more freedom. Yeah. So if they don't want to listen to the talk,
start talking.
They'll start talking, they'll start yapping, they'll start playing with their kids or whatever it is. Yeah. And for the sister who actually wants to listen,
they can't.
She's not hearing anything. So it's like, well, how do we resolve this issue? And you can tell those women off as many times as you like. Yeah. You can tell them off and say, please be quiet during the reminder, please be quiet during the talk. Please. Yeah. It's never going to work.
Doesn't matter.
It's not going to work until they're actually at the back of the room.
Yeah. And if they have a question, how do you relay that to where it reaches? Like, let's say there's a lecture going on. How do you relay that to the front to where the necessary people get it at the right time? There's no way to say we're doing it ladies first when ladies are last. Yeah. There's no way to do it first. There's no way to be sure, okay, did the ladies all get their iftar? Well, they're not supposed to be talking.
Yeah, we don't know.
So we don't know if they got their iftar. We don't know whether they starved to death, whether they broke their fast, whether the fast broke them. We don't know what happened to them because they're shut off. Yeah, then there's incidents where there have been sex attacks in these places because no one's back there. There's no security there or anything else. Those places are badly kept, so they're dusty. They often have mold and damp on the walls and things like that because the men don't know because, hey, I don't pray in there.
Yeah, they never go there. And sometimes if they have them sort of, they might have them quote unquote in the masjid, but they might be on a balcony, but they'll have like the soundproof glass. Yeah. So while she is being assaulted up there and she's screaming her head off, we can't hear her.
Yeah. Well, if they're waiting for one of the Kennedys because they don't want him to get shot, so the soundproof glass up, and might have Kennedys here. Yeah. And so it's these type of fitan happen, where in reality that should not be the case. You need to have the situation where the congregation is together, because in the time of the Rasul in the first three generations, this was the case. Now people will say, well, we're not as pure as them, so we might fall into the fitan and everything else. Okay, so what do you do in Egypt that from the Khalaf period up until now has been building masjids where the ladies are praying in the back? What do you do about that? They've never understood that this age is more unpure than the ages before, so therefore there need to be sister sections. They've not done that at all. Yeah. They've carried on as they are. They've carried on where ladies are included. Now, the women that want to, you'll sometimes find a woman will like put up a curtain or put up something like that if they want to sit and relax, like if they're doing i'tikaf or something like that. But they're not unincluded from the masjid. Yeah. They're not completely disengaged. And by not allowing them to do that, then people get angry because they say, well, my daughter doesn't pray, she doesn't wear hijab, she doesn't do this, she doesn't do that. Well, she's not around the environment. Yeah. That's conducive to those things where she learns about these things. She doesn't want to learn. I don't know what's wrong with her. Well, she's not included in anything. So why wouldn't she want to learn? Yeah, why would she want to learn?
Yeah, because I translated a fatwa on my blog, Imam Muhammad, on women in the masjid. He made that point that if we say women can't go to the masjid, but they can go everywhere else. Yeah. They can go to the markets, they can go to the cinemas, they can go to the malls, they can go to all these other places. They go to universities.
What message are you sending?
So, yeah.
What message are you sending?
Exactly. And when they go to universities and schools, for example, of course they're free mixing.
Yeah, those are compulsorily co-ed.
Yeah.
If you try to come in there and influence something, you're not going to be able to go there. Yeah. They're compulsorily co-ed.
Yeah, so you don't stop her from going there. Because somehow that's important or whatever it is, right? Getting that education. But the masjid, no. She has to be kept away from there. And if she is there, she has to be out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
Now, this is something we've been talking about for a long time.
Yeah.
We've been at masjid, because you've published several articles.
Yeah, I've done articles and got a lot of flack because it's the pictures I've used and also the language I used when I did them that angered a lot of people. Because at the end of one of the articles, it had stacked up bodies of dead Palestinian children. And I said, this is what some of the imams of some masjids want to do to women. And a lot of people got angry, but it's the truth, because that's ultimately what they're doing, is they're killing the souls of these ladies by not including them in anything.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to mention. Yeah, because there's a well-known story of was it Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad where Umar al-Khattab stood up on the minbar? Yeah, and he tried to change women's dowries, and a woman stood up and corrected him.
Yeah, and so the immediate thing you're wondering is, how did that happen? How did she get out of the sister section? And what was she doing talking? Her voice is aura. It's like, no, well, both of these things are not the case. Yeah. First of all, she's in the same location that the men are in. So it was possible for her to stand up. Yeah. Just like the woman when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that he saw a large abundance of women in the fire, and she stood up and said, Messenger of Allah, why is that? She stood up in objection. Right? How could that have happened? Yeah. So all these types of things are occurring because they're drilling forth the point that they were in the back along with the children, and they were present. They were in the same locale. And they should be in the same locale. Even if you look at it like, there's one that's in the Sahih of a Muslim, where the Rasul ﷺ, he said, ladies, make sure that when you're in prostration, that you delay coming up until you're sure that the men are fully seated. Ibn Rajab, Imam Nawawi, Ibn Hajar, all the commentators of Hadith say the same thing. It's because many of the men's clothes were so tattered and worn that you could, if you're looking from a certain vantage point, see their genitalia, or possibly a glimpse of it. So the women were told to delay raising their heads until the men were fully seated in julus, whether it's tawarruk or iftirash or what have you, but until they were fully seated. Now, that is dangerous. Yet he still had them praying there. Yeah. That's dangerous. Some of the women on the Eid day were having their monthly cycle. He still said, come out. If you need to borrow the jilbab of your Muslim sister, borrow it. But come out. You need to be here. Yeah. Because of this day. So that shows how important, how integral women are to the community. So, and by not allowing that, you're sort of sabotaging yourself. And then the boys don't know how to treat women. So it's like, why is he always disrespecting his mother? Why is he treating his sister in this way? Why is he treating his aunts in this way? When he has female teachers that are Muslim female teachers, why does he act in that fashion? Well,
maybe it's because he thinks women shouldn't be there. Yeah. That's what's been drilled into him. So, with all of that said, I think we're coming up to 43 minutes. I think maybe something we could close out on is, now that we've discussed what a masjid is and what the nature of masajid are in these countries, in these Anglosphere countries, what is the future? And what I'm getting at here, obviously, is Post-Masjidism. Like, what's going to happen now? What future do these masajid have?
The future here for masjids in the Anglosphere is one in which what we refer to as Post-Masjidism, where there's a flight away from the masajid. The masajid that they've built, these large mammoth buildings, far outstrips the demands of any community. Yeah. They're building, it's sort of like what happens when a gas company buys gas in advance on an estimation. Yeah. They're assuming that this many people will buy it. Now, when the gas company does that and not enough people buy it at the calorific value, then it sits in storage until someone buys it. In this case, for the masjid, there is no storage. If those people don't come and there's no one to pay for the enormous gas bill when you have a meter that's a U60, a U150, a U170, just massive meters that have coils coming out of them like octopuses, when there's no one there to pay for that, those places close down. And I would say probably within the next decade and a half, you'll see some of these places nosediving and disappearing because they can't be maintained, because the community that they thought would be there is not there, because they're looking at the measurements of how many people are converting to Islam and ignoring the recidivism.
Yeah.
which recidivism rates are 70% in some instances. So they're ignoring the recidivism rates. So if you're having all these converts, but only 30% are left, who's going to populate these masjids? They're also ignoring the apostates from born Muslims in this country. They're ignoring the government's slow creep into monitoring, surveying these places and their closure. They're ignoring the direction that masjids are headed in, where they're becoming more politicized and more watched, and more places where you have to toe a party line. And as more and more of this happens and people pull away from these, you're going to start to get very small, tight-knit communities of Muslims that are completely separate to masjids. And you might have generations that come after them that have never been to a masjid, because they're living in small inlet communities in the countrysides, small hamlets, areas like that. And masjids will be places where you'll be under surveillance. Masjids will be places that you're actually in danger, because they'll start keeping congregation lists like for churches and things like this. So it's not a good look where all this is headed. It's not in a good direction. But because people assume, well, we see all these masjids being built, that means we're going in a good direction. No. That's an estimation.
Yeah.
What they're building is an estimate.
It's a hope and a prayer. I mean, because you see masjids being built, and then, as we mentioned before, the conditions that there's a masjid being built before there's a community. There's sort of, you're building a masjid because you want to be different, you want to have your own thing, but you're not considering, okay, who's actually going to come? And then you're hoping, okay, well, we'll set this up, and then we'll do these things, and then people will be attracted to us. And
by that time, our sect will have grown until it reaches this numbers, and you're assuming that your sect will still be around when it's all said and done. You know, there's one masjid in this city that a sect has been building it since the 70s, and what's happened? It's still undone. It's still not done. And that same sect has continued to build in spite of everything else.
Yeah. I think there's some sort of loophole they're trying to get out of.
Yeah.
Or a loophole they're exploiting, because once you avoid some sort of tax if you're in the process of building.
Yeah.
And once you complete the building, then a tax is imposed upon you.
Yeah.
There's other ill stuff going on.
Just dirty little things.
Okay. So I think we've covered enough. I think that does lay out what a masjid is, how it's supposed to function, what's happening in the Anglosphere, what the future holds.
Perhaps a question people might ask is there any way to redeem these places, like an Anglosphere, like the United States or the Europe? Is there a way to redeem any of these places based upon what they know now and what's happened? Maybe that question might come up. To which my immediate response would be, and you can probably chime in on this right after, my immediate response would be, because these places started off being built without permission and being built with illicit wealth and coming from, the great many of these places are not redeemable.
Yeah.
Because many of them don't fit the hukum of a masjid.
Yeah.
In technical terms, irrespective of what's written on the door or above them or on a frieze that's suspended on the wall, they don't fit the hukum of a masjid. But then that being said, someone says, okay, well, what if we just start a community and then we build our way up to a masjid? It's like, well, where we are right now in the Anglosphere, this is not the time to be trying to create big masjid building projects like the 70s and the 80s. This is not the time for that. This is the time for downsizing.
Yeah.
This is the time for self-preservation and protection of, small atomic units of family. This is not the time for going all out with all the surveillance that's here. So it's like, this is not the time for that.
Because even if you look at the administrative masjids, I mean, when you look at it, when I look at masjids, I think of what could be done. We mentioned ta'aleem, education, earlier. Like in these masajid, no one's doing fiqh.
Yeah.
No one's doing fiqh classes, no one's doing theology classes, but fiqh, especially in a more practical sense of whether it's ibadat, muamalat, nothing's happening.
No.
And all these masajid are doing, they have that same thing in common every single time. It's just Quran classes, Quran classes, Quran classes, what they call hifs. No tajweed, hifs. That's all that's happening.
And it's like you using the word
kids.
By using the word hifs or Quran classes, it's like we have to put those in quotation marks, like the name of mafia dons.
Yeah.
Vincent the Chin Gigante, because those are quotations.
Yeah.
These are nicknames. They're not the real reality.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is the classes that are being done are lessons in how to drive someone away from Islam. How to lose a Muslim in 2 years.
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
And so they go through this whole process. They go through all these permutations, and they ultimately wind up very disillusioned. Now, those that come back to Islam in their later life, those that are so blessed, they're still alienated because of abuses they've suffered. They still have flashbacks. Some of them don't know how to relate with other people, how to relate with their wives because of what they've undergone in the masjids.
So I think also when we had this discussion last year when we talked about our failures are lost. We also talked about the big step. I mean, I at one point, I think several years ago, I had this sort of sit down and I thought about, I think someone made some comment to me about like what I need to do for the Masjid of England or something like that or whatever. I thought back and I said, wait a second. From my time living in England or even visiting England, I've never, ever, ever studied in a masjid. Yeah. In terms of actually sitting down with a teacher and going over a book cover to cover. I've attended durus in the masjid. There's like one masjid I know of that was an Arab masjid up north, where I did attend some tajweed classes. I used to translate for some classes. There's some comparative fiqh, but nothing too in depth or serious. But in terms of actually getting knowledge done, it's always been with private teachers in their homes. Yeah. And I think that says everything. Yeah. When we talk about, the fact that we had this discussion last year, like having a new Muslim project. Like having Nas-new Muslims or having...
Why does that need to be there?
Yeah, again, and I used to say to people, I say the fact that these exist indicates something is seriously wrong. These new Muslim organizations should not exist. The masjid should be in charge of this. They should be helping new Muslims. They should be bringing them in and teaching them and helping them get married. It's their job.
It's endemic of a greater problem.
Yeah. It's like, in an ideal world, I would not be doing this, and I would not be running this organization. Yeah. So there's so many problems there, like you were saying just a few minutes ago. It is almost irredeemable. It is irredeemable, and it has to go back to. I'm going to stop there. I don't know where to begin. Yeah. There's so many things that you have to address.
Because there will be for every one that's doing what it's supposed to do, for every one masjid that's doing what it's supposed to do and abiding by its standard, there'll be another 20 or 30 that are not, because that's the norm. The one that's not doing it, that's the one that, subhanAllah, that's going outside of the system. Yeah. It's doing what it's not supposed to be doing. Namely, it's teaching people and guiding. That's one. Yeah. But then you look at another 20 or another 30, and those ones are far overstepping the bounds of what they're supposed to be doing and running like, I can't think of any way, the way some of them are run in terms of enforcing discipline on people that they deem as unruly. It's if you look at the 5 mafia crime families of New York, the discipline that they used, or if you look at the movie Untouchables, or how Big Paul Castellano ruled, it's like the way that those were done, those mafia dons are running these syndicates. Yeah. And they have a consigliere, there's the council, and all these other things. They're run as mafias. And there's not really a cure for that, in that sense, because the mafia doesn't want to go legitimate. That's why they're the mafia.
Yeah, exactly. Don't
want to go legitimate.
It's like, it reminds me of this quote where, I think it was the economist Thomas Sowell, he was asked, if we get rid of the Federal Reserve, what do we replace it with? Right. And he said, I don't know. If you have a cancerous tumor, what do you replace it with? It's the very nature of these things. You can't change them or replace them with something. It's just...
They have to go.
Yeah. And then we don't have. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, because you mentioned certain masjids are run properly, because you do have certain masjids where there isn't a mortgage. You get that right, where there isn't a mortgage. They're not behind on their gas bills, their electricity bills, their water bills.
The imam has real power.
Yeah, but those are few and far between. And they can't hold the capacity, because if someone says, well, tell us the names of these, and we tell them, it's like, listen, 4 million Muslims or however many are in England, they're not going to fit in 2 or 3 masjids. It's not going to work. So there's no point going through that whole process of saying, okay, all 4 million Muslims go here. They're not going to fit. You're not going to fit. That's what a pandemic is. It's greater than an epidemic. A pandemic it's all over the place. Yeah. So I think that is a final point. It's I guess it's not a very positive one, but it is important information to bear in mind. And I think, as in line with Post-Masjidism, that's what we're going to see. That was always been my experience. There's going to be more at-home knowledge, at-home teaching, just in private homes, people getting together, doing duru's, getting books done, and these big barns will just carry on as a normal.
And I say I wouldn't think that we're ending on a negative point. I'd say it's a positive point, because the fact that people are going home and they're going to the homes of people means that people are trying to create something similar to what, because people are falling back on what the first three generations are doing. They're going to the homes of other adults.
Yeah.
They're going into the Dar al-Arqam system, because they're acknowledging we're not ready for a community yet.
Yeah.
Because our adults aren't educated. We're not ready for a community yet. We're not ready for a community yet.
Yeah,
and these other places are saying, yes, we are. It's like, no, you're not. And to show you that we're not coming.
Yeah.
To show you that we're actually not ready for a community, we're not coming.
Yeah.
We're not paying anything. We're not coming. We're not sending our kids. We're not going to come.
Yeah. Because it's putting the cart before the horse. That's what they've done in this country. Yeah. Okay, so I think we'll finish at that point. We're up just almost an hour. I think that's appropriate. Any final comments?
No, I think we've looked at the matter in some depth, and I think there's a lot of sort of food for thought that has to be taken, but a lot of really good. I think there's a lot of good in terms of looking to the future on this matter, in terms of saying, okay, well, we can't get the knowledge from these locations, but it doesn't mean that it's over, that we can't learn, that we can't get knowledge, because there's other people, there's sprinklings of people here and there, and we're trying to follow this Dar al-Arqam system, so it's not over.
Yeah. And alhamdulillah, as we are demonstrating right now, there's the internet.
Yes.
There are other ways of getting knowledge and information
there's
out there.
There's a whole world out there. Entire world.
So we can get videos out, we can publish books now.
Yes.
There's a lot of things we can do, alhamdulillah. So we'll finish on that point, and inshallah we'll come together very soon for another podcast. والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.